Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So today I wanted to review and analyze a gameplay from stream that we got 5,300 damage. What's very interesting about this gameplay is, at the time I didn't really label it as anything particularly interesting, and then till the end when the damage really started ramping up. So I wanted to provide as many tips, guides to producing a high damage game, especially considering this one didn't necessarily pop really quickly. So what's interesting is seeing this guy is clearly AFK and they dropped on him. And also what's very interesting is the range on the Mastiff, and no matter what, it seems to always still land for at least a bit of damage. But already right off the rip, I always highlight how important it is to have poke damage. Poke damage is very important because that gives you the entry damage that you need, whether you're playing arenas or whether you're playing the BR version of the game. It is vital to ensure that you have as much poke damage. So poke damage could be using a flatline or even an R301. But it's very important to get that entry damage that you're looking for to get into a gunfight. It's pretty solid movement just to get away. I didn't do any damage there, but we're getting constantly thirded and pushed from very different angles. So my close range damage that I have here is with the Mastiff, and my long range is the longbow. Your weapon composition is going to be very important to ensuring that you can get a high damage game. If you do not have very good spray control with the R99 or another weapon, I highly recommend switching to something that's a lot more comfortable. A good comfortable weapon would definitely be the flatline again, or R301. And if you do not know how to practice your R99, can definitely recommend just practicing the spray pattern. If there's any gun to practice a spray pattern with early on, it is with the R99, just because it's got the most, I guess you could say the most difficult, and even then it's not too bad. You don't have to pull down as much as you think. So already early on, this is 4 kills and already 541 damage. What I'm going to do is make sure that I skip ahead, and we will review whenever I'm in a gunfight. The great thing about Loba that I want to highlight as well is that she's great for ensuring that you have as much ammo as you need. One mistake not to make when you're using Loba, or if you have a Loba on your team, is spend too much time looting. Because remember, every second in a game really matters into ensuring that you do damage. If you are too slow on the next encounter, then rest assured that you're going to be missing out on damage and, well, kills, to be blunt. So immediately, if we spent that extra time, let's imagine we spent 10 more seconds looting, that those horizon cues would not actually be in the air for me to get that elimination. That's how I want everyone to look at this game whenever you are rotating and moving, that whenever you're not fighting for position, that even 10 seconds is an extremely long amount of time. And it can make and break whether you make an encounter in time. And speaking of which, another tip that I can provide to you is make sure that you have sufficient batteries. Batteries are going to be the best way to maintain momentum to keep you within the fight. Once you lose out on those batteries, you really should keep rotating or getting into a fight to obtain batteries, because when you don't have batteries, or at least a gold armor, your reset potential is really difficult. It can be very hard to get back into the fight. What's interesting about this lobby is that it's already halfway done. There's only 10 squads remaining. And I let the lifeline res there. Another tip, make sure that you let your lifeline res to save yourself time. Remember how we mentioned time is important? Make sure you prioritize where your strengths of your team are. There's 2 Loba ults, so we should be able to get every bit of resources that we need. I'm switching my sniper to a different long-range weapon, which is the R301. I have a 3x on it, which I feel very comfortable with using, and is why I'm making a switch. I know that I can do a full kit switch because there's 2 Loba ults, so try to make as much good use of your time as possible. And that's whenever you rotate. So now there's only 23 individuals alive. I have the most kills in the lobby, yes, but I haven't even broken 1,000 damage. And by this point, some individuals will have broken more damage. This is really important to highlight as well. If you're looking to get your 4K badge, that you don't necessarily have to drop hot. If you drop hot, everyone is going to have white armor. Everyone has white armor. It means that their health pool is only at 150. Remember that whenever you eliminate a downed enemy, that additional damage also counts. But unfortunately, when you are in early encounters and early fights, you're going to find that you are unable to capitalize on that extra damage to get that finish. So later on in the encounter, everyone's going to have blues and purples. If everyone has blues and purples, that means that they're going to have larger health pools, and even that you have a higher potential to finish the down target. just because if they're caught in a position. You're going to see that here later on as well. So you can have 10 kills and barely break 1,000 damage, because if you're thirding, you are not coming in for the full amount of damage, and that is a problem. That's why your 4K badges can be limited. It's why sometimes you see 20 elimination badges with only like 2,500 damage, because at the start of the round, they weren't able to capitalize on it. So we're going to do, let's skip here a little bit further ahead now that we kind of got that out of the way. I think there is an enemy here. Skip right to the moment. So we're trying to rotate to zone to get into the next encounter, and it's important to keep your movement and mobility, especially if you're a Loba. You have great mobility, wall balance as much as you can forward. Don't wait for teammates. If you're trying to go for a 4K badge, be confident that you can push forward. If your teammate's lagging behind, there's two consequences to waiting for your teammate. And also pro. The pro means that you're going to stay alive and that you're going to have a higher chance of winning. The downside is that you're missing out on damage and also on eliminations. So if your teammates are slow and you're confident that you can rotate and get out, then do so. If you're a Wraith, you can queue out and reposition and then run right back to your teammates and reset. So you have that ability. If I'm Loba, I can definitely queue out. As a Watson and perhaps a Gibraltar, probably a bit harder to do. You kind of have to stay in it. So this always happens when you're playing with teammates, is that sometimes they'll say you're pushing too much while you're sweating so hard. If you're done looting, try to keep the team moving with you and keep pace, and then hunker down and hold. And I call this playing passive aggressive. If you play quote-unquote passive-aggressive, you're not necessarily full inting and making a mistake yet. Where I'm at, I'm not making a mistake. We're scouting, we're looking around, and I know I can get out of dodge if something were to happen. But at least I am in the zone enough to provide information. If one person, because there's always within a squad, you have your entry fragger, you have your scout, and then you have your anchor. A scout is also, you could say, your flanker. Your entry fragger is usually like a Wraith, the first one to get damaged, and then rotate and find a different position. Your scouter is usually, let's say, like a Pathfinder, a Loba, somebody who can take a different angle, and there we go, we find the next bit of damage here. It's important to practice your mid to long range if you're going to obtain a 4K badge. I can't tell you at this point how many 4K damage games that I've gotten. There's just so many, and I don't even upload all of them. But they happen a lot. And the reason they happen a lot is because of that mid-range game, and it makes you really effective in ranked games specifically, especially when you're playing Diamond or Master lobbies. It becomes more of a matter of how you work your way in at the high tier level. That's why you see me taking an off angle here and doing damage, and there's a bit of damage, and then you rotate. So 62 damage, you're putting pressure and you're scaring the enemy team. If you know the information that's coming in, then you're better equipped to fight and win that situation. So we made a push. We're getting shot in the back here, so the best thing we can do is just rotate on the right side of the rock so we're not getting hit. But this is a great way for me to keep pressure on both teams. It's something you can work on, whether you're using a 2x, a 3x. Finding the weapon of your choice that you can dish out damage. If I was stuck with an R99 and a Mastiff here, it would be much more difficult to land all of these shots. But by having that mid-range, long-range weapon, you're setting yourself up for more success. So essentially I've gone up an additional 500 damage, but it wasn't because of anything really special. It was pretty much obtaining information and making a push, and there's a nice spray with 181 damage. So this is really good, and we have great reset potential here. We got 2 gold armors, and we have a me with a red with a lot of batteries. So there's a lot of resource sharing as long as a team is calming on their resources, and even if they're not, knowing that you have the right resources to push. So in this scenario, I decided to move up and push to go for some damage. The other team is doing a lot of poke damage. I'm praying that they're going to miss their shots and that the angle I have here is now safe. So now we have, I believe, 2 down potentially, and then we go in for the 3rd cleanup in here, and this is going to equate to about 2,000 damage. I think the other person got up, so I decided to do a finisher for the extra points. And then we're here at almost 2,000 damage. So unfortunately, it wasn't the full amount. And then we have another team pretty much landing on us here. So now that we have 9 kills and 2k damage, this is, again, a total game of 5,300. So when you need resources, in this situation, this is where Loba is really great to help you get a 4k badge, is that when you're out of ammo, well, then you're not going to be able to dish out any damage. But dishing out damage is not a bad thing. It's never a bad thing because it puts pressure. It causes individuals to reset. So if you have a really strong poke game, there's never a reason to look at it as a negative, ever. Unless you are taking yourself too much damage or you physically get knocked, meaning that you are peeking and poking for far too long, which is something that you will learn how to do over time. Let's see if, I think at this point we have a pretty strong peek game by taking different angles. And that's a pretty risky spot to do. At the same time, I was hoping that they're caught off guard. So if you have an angle, they call this like a jiggle peek. In CSGO, that's probably the best terminology for it. You can kind of apply the same thought process to Apex as well, is your jiggle peek, ducking in and out of cover. One thing I mentioned is don't stay ADS the whole time when trying to peek a corner. You can ADS in and out and then reload, and don't stay ADS the full time because you want to maintain your momentum when going in and out of cover. When you're ADS, your movement velocity is much slower. And this is even worse when you're using a longbow. So you constantly need to zoom in, zoom out, potentially, when ducking and weaving in and out of cover. Another tips and advice I can provide is you can already see that we have done now 2,500, so we're halfway there. And what's crazy, that as your MMR gets up, this is a really interesting, I know this as a fact, that the lobbies start to sweat more. You start to run into teams that are a lot sweatier, that are going to be pushing for, what's the right terminology to use for? They want to win, just bluntly. They want to win, and they're going to be sweating as much as possible for it. I decided to switch the Kraber with the Mastiff here just because my mid-range game is so strong, and I'm pretty confident using the R301, even with a 3x at close range. Now, the interesting thing that happens here is my Kraber's shots are really bad. I'm going to point that out. I know I landed that shot, but trust me, I miss a lot of these Kraber shots. They're really, really rough. And so I actually don't capitalize on as much damage. And it's not that I'm not trying to find an elimination. You're going to find, and this is the point I was trying to make, and I apologize for kind of circling back, is that you're going to find 4K damage games are easier to obtain at a higher tier level. And your 20 bombs become less, I guess, easily obtainable. And that's just one thing that you unfortunately have to kind of come to terms with, because as you can, from the lobby, one of the biggest things that became very clear, and like I told you, I'm missing all these Kraber shots are like just slightly off, and I even call it out in game. I'm like, I still don't understand how I missed that. I'm just slightly off with every single shot, and I was just saying how my day is ruined. But to circle back about the 4K badge and 20 bomb, is that at lower tier lobbies, more people are alive. But if you saw that half the lobby was already eliminated by the time we were able to rotate and even engage on the remaining part of the lobby, the only thing that's really available is just the 4K at that point. There is no way at this point that I'm going to obtain a 20 bomb unless I eliminate every single person remaining in the lobby, and that'll get me 21, but I had to eliminate every single person. And with lobbies that sweat this hard, unfortunately, it's just not going to happen. Unfortunately, like these teams are holding out really, really well. And with these teams playing a lot more passively, it makes it virtually impossible to cross in an open field or push anything. I know the minute that I push one of these teams that the other one is going to push forward in third at that point. So you need to get a really strong knock and then find the right positioning. I think we actually do. Let's see if I get this knock right here. I guess I didn't. So I pretty much whiffed a majority of my Kraber shots. If I landed more of these Kraber shots, it would have been interesting if this would have been perhaps a 6K damage game. I don't think we would have been able to push on that. But it's just putting as much pressure as possible so then you can make a potential play later. Because essentially all you're doing is just trying to drain the enemy of as many batteries as possible. That's the overall goal. At least that's my goal. You know, the less batteries they have and the slower the reset potential, you won't ever really know what's fully in their inventory, but you will at least be able to identify that they're taking a longer time to reset. So this is now a 3K damage game. Notice how nobody in the lobby has been eliminated. I use the ult to reset here to get more light ammo, and then I look for a different weapon. I decided to go with the bow check just because I know for a fact I won't be able to fully upgrade a sniper. So I decide to wait. on that. And I stick with the bow check, and luckily I do, because it does pan out for some really strong damage. And also, just a sniper without getting all the attachments can be really, really rough. Like, let's say if you're missing the sight, and if you're missing the ammo, which I looked and there wasn't a whole lot. So taking damage where you can. Don't be shy, even if you miss your shots. I think I'm the biggest advocate of that. From what you can see, I miss a lot of shots, and I've done it many, many times. And the biggest thing I can always say, miss your shots so you can learn how to land them later. You're never going to be perfect. I missed so many Kraber shots there, so I'm a great example of it. But at least you know that you can make a play. If you're pushing somebody with gold armor, they're also going to have really great reset potential. And the reason why we finally make a push on this team specifically is they're pretty much in shambles, and the other team I know isn't very far back in the map, and I know they will not have time to third us. I know if they don't have time to third us, then I really have, well, less to worry about. So now this is a 3,591 damage game. And I apologize. I did make the mistake of adding our own number to our teammates. So I'm sure somebody in the comment section is going to point that out. I like to record these comms in one go, just because it feels a lot more authentic, like I'm talking with you guys. I couldn't have gotten even 20 eliminations here. It's not possible, because I was adding in our team in there. So my bad. I'm sure somebody will point it out. I just wasn't thinking, so I apologize for that. But I'm sure somebody's going to point that out in the video. Now, this is an interesting choice. I mention this all the time to everyone. If there are no bats, and we're going to look right now, in the area, and there's none. And he did ping the armor already, so I shouldn't have grabbed it, so that's also a mistake, being aware of your teammates. But I switch armors here because there are no batteries. Because there are no batteries, I know that my reset potential is going to take way too long. I need to focus on how I can reset as fast as possible, which is going to be done through gold armor. So when we talk about red versus gold armor, it should always be identified: how many batteries do you have and how many cells do you have? How can you be as efficient as possible? If you have 4 cells and you have a red armor, you're not even going to be able to fully utilize the red armor. You're going to go back to pretty much just purple anyways. But if you have a gold armor and you have 4 cells, well, you're going to be able to top yourself back up to full HP to purple twice instead of just one time. So think of the numbers game, and that's really important, because that pretty much kept us alive here. And it helped me reset. I know I kind of burned through cells, but I also, their poke game on this enemy team is really strong, so I constantly just try to keep topped off, because I don't want to get one shot. In fact, in a moment, there is a team above and a team down below. And it's interesting, because everyone decides to shoot at me in just a second. I try to take out their ult and try to do some damage, because I don't want them to get resources. But for some reason, and this happens, you got to make sure that you're not wide swinging too much. Wide swinging, another tip, is whenever you're cutting the angle to look how many people just shot at me. Like, everyone and their grandmother decided to just look at me instead of everyone else. So this is about to be a 4K game. 10 more damage and we're at 4K damage. And there we go, 4K. And then the 5K just comes naturally here, because we're taking shots. But when you wide swing, you want to get the angle, yes, but you also want to make sure that you're not going to get picked on. And I could have gone down right there. I want to point that out. That could have been the end of the round for me. When you wide swing and you do not have cover, you're putting yourself more at risk. And at higher ranked, at Diamond and Masters, I would have been eliminated there. That would have been over. That would have been a mistake of me wide peeking way too much. And it's a mistake I see a lot of lower tier players make, is whenever you cut the angle too wide. And the spray was horrible. Could have had even higher damage game here. But you see how, even though this was an amazing game of 5,300 damage, or 400, I don't even remember the number. And I wait for them there to maximize on the damage. And we have both of the teams pretty much picking on us here. So I decided to go for the reset just because the Devo from MTL there is just doing work. And even then, I don't think there's enough batteries in here, and decided to pretty much lay down as much fire as possible. This unfortunately gets really tight, so I decided to armor swap for the immediate heal, and then I decided to potentially go for a res here. I think we do it in the hallway. The other team unfortunately got eliminated, but the idea here is to keep as much pressure. The rampart walls are placed really, really well. And at this point, I wish I had the gold armor. because I made the swap, but I really wish I could have gone back, because right now this really highlights that reset potential and why it's so much of a struggle. So we do res, and we do get a reset here, and I try to go back for the gold armor, and I see the gold helm. I don't know why I hesitated on that. That's another tip and advice when you're shopping and looting, especially with every second that matters. It's a waste of time to go shopping for other things when you know you only need one item out of your bag and inventory. So don't make that mistake. So yes, we get a bat here, but there's no reason to change to the gold armor, or sorry, red armor. One is down, decide to wide swing it. That was definitely risky because I could have gotten shot in the back. So that was I guess you can say, quote unquote, a high risk play. And at this point, it's just trying to stay alive with whatever resources that I do have. So I decided just to hard hold angles. This is like that CSGO tactic, just hard holding an angle. And I try to go for the swap, and there it is. I think I try to go for another swap here in a moment, but your swaps are pretty much going to be your fastest heal at this level. I could have made a mistake here. Honestly, this could have been the death of me. He should have peeked and I should have died, but I got the swap and then I finished out. That could have been another mistake. Honestly, I could have just looked up and shot instead of going for that swap. If they looked down at me, they could have eliminated me. That would have been it for me. If you're not confident in your swaps, you really should just go for the fight because you're just standing there. So that was another mistake that I could have made there. That could have been pretty detrimental. But I hope that this was insightful to see. I don't necessarily know if it's the craziest round, but 5,400 damage is a lot of damage, and a lot happened. A lot of engagements, a lot of damage was dealt out, and it's for information, and it should, well, help you guys out. Again, I really appreciate all of you guys for watching. Don't forget, again, to leave a comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you guys all in the next video.